Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the five greatest, that's the word, Bach organists. Yes, believe it or not, I like Bach organ music very much. In fact, I love Bach organ music. In fact, it's the thing by Bach I probably like the most. Probably because it's the thing by Bach that he did better than anybody else. I've always said that whenever you find a piece of great Baroque organ music, you might as well say it's by Bach, because that's the only organ music anyone really wants to hear. I know all of you organists are jumping up and down like crazy, going, Buxtehude, and boom! And there's Froberger and Frescobaldi, and I know they're all out there, but really, who cares? We all want to hear Bach. And the organ is particularly well suited to Bach's music, I believe, because of its lack of expressivity. I know that sounds a little odd, but the organ is, they call it the king of instruments. It is wonderful at expressing transcendental, superhuman sort of emotional states, because it is a mechanical instrument, and nothing will change that. And you sense that when you hear it, the ability to sustain notes for any length of time, the size, the amplitude of the sound, and the nature of the sound. It's really quite alien. It's the origin of like the synthesizer and that sort of thing. And so it's wonderful at highlighting the architectural mastery of Bach's counterpoint, of presenting, this sort of sacred, overwhelming, you know what I mean, right? I don't have to go into it, do I? I've tried to discuss this. It never works. But you get the concept. And so Bach was just incredible at that kind of thing. And I adore counterpoint. It's my favorite thing when it comes to Bach, for sure. And yes, he wrote some great tunes and whatnot, but really the fun stuff in Bach is all contrapuntal. And his organ music is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. So if I want to hear organ music, which I don't really all that often, but when I do, I just as soon hear Bach. And after that, I skip to the French school, to Franck, Widor, Vierne, those folks, who are also wonderful because they were able to sublimate the influence of Bach. The fascinating thing about Bach's organ music is that for a long time after his passing, it was considered unplayable because of the requirement, the advanced pedal technique it required principally. Bach famously wrote for everything the same. Voices, trumpets, oboes, he didn't care. He just thought everything should be able to do everything. And when it came to the organ basically had three voices, the right hand, the left hand, and the 2 feet. The 2 feet combined to make one voice. But the technique is incredibly virtuosic. And, in France in the 19th century, it was a revelation when organists started playing Bach, because French organists had lost the ability to use the pedals, the pedal board, in the way that Bach demanded, and they finally regained it in the second half of the 19th century, hence Franck, Widor, Vierne, and those people. But really, it was a remarkable thing, and Bach's organ music, for that reason, is astoundingly exciting and richly varied between, the preludes and fugues and toccatas and sort of the abstract pieces, and then the chorale variations and chorale settings and various pieces that were made for, use in the actual church service. Really astonishing stuff. So who are the five greatest Bach organists? Well, first you have to begin with Helmut Walcha. Helmut Walcha was, the iconic Bach organist for much of the 20th century, or at least the first half of it. He was blind, an extraordinary musician, and he had 2 complete sets of Bach's organ music. There's a mono set and a stereo set. The mono set, he was in maybe tiny bit better shape. It was a little bit more flexible. He was always a little bit rigid. But then again, Bach, sort of benefits from being a little rigid and a little stuffy and architectural. He was German after all. Nobody expects him to actually dance, although he could, and he did, and his music does. But Walcha was a tremendous organist, and he deserves all of the acclaim, that he's received over the decades. After Walcha, I just love André Isoir. He's now on La Dolce Volta, I believe. It used to be on Calliope originally. The French organ school, like I said, the French organ school is just the niftiest. I mean, because they have all the 19th century repertoire, and they had the great organs, because organ building as an art form passed from Germany in Bach's time, Silbermann and those folks, to Cavaillé-Coll and Merklin and the French folks in the 19th century, and they built these magnificent instruments, and so you have a remarkable school of organ playing, which culminated in composers like Messiaen, Dupré, and Duruflé, and just really, really great stuff. So André Isoir is a marvelous Bach organist, and his complete cycle was back out, was reissued on La Dolce Volta, and hopefully it's still around. Also on Hyperion, Christopher Herrick. Christopher Herrick is just a great organist. It's a great cycle. It has no weak links. I tend to pull that one out very frequently whenever I want to hear the trio sonatas, because they're my favorite contrapuntal things in the whole universe. Bach's organ trios, they're just such fabulous examples of pure counterpoint, pure, delicious three-part counterpoint. You just put them on and let the cosmos revolve in your brain. It's just incredible. So Herrick is definitely somebody worth considering. And, well, back to the French organ school, Marie-Claire Alain. She was a marvel. She recorded, I believe, 3 complete Bach organ cycles, varying degrees. There's sort of a question as to how much Bach is in a complete Bach organ cycle, because there are a lot of pieces that have questionable attribution, and there are also shorter works and pieces you can play on the organ that may not have been written for the organ, and questionable things like that. But she was fantastic, and you can just pick and choose among any of her organ cycles. They're on Erato, at least most of them are, and she had, originally she came out of the French Romantic school, then she became more interested in using historical instruments. Organ music, organ performance is as much about the organ as it is about the organist, which is true of a lot of Baroque music. It's also true of the harpsichord and various other things. You've got to find a great instrument in a really flattering acoustical space and record it accordingly. And that's not always easy. You don't always find that, and it's difficult. And some of the most famous people at the most famous organs have terrible instruments, like the organ at Notre Dame Cathedral, which unfortunately didn't burn down with the rest of it. That would have been nice. They could have started over. I mean, just a terrible sounding instrument, a big, echoey, boomy acoustic. There are a lot of organs that need help. It's a tremendously complex instrument, thousands of pipes, and you need to be constantly tuning and fixing and polishing and buffing and fluffing and, whatever you do with it just to keep the damn thing running. And so it's tricky. It's very tricky. And the choice of organ is always terribly, terribly important. And of course, Marie-Claire Alain was very, very sensitive when it came to her selection of instruments. And another cycle that I absolutely love, and if you're into the instrumental side of it, is this one. I actually have it sitting here on Richard Carr. This is number 5. Bernard Foccroulle. There he is, Bernard Foccroulle. He's not actually, Foccroulle is not in the picture here. These are, early people in a gigantic acoustic, probably with an organ stuffed into it somewhere. Oh yeah, there it is. There's the organ. Anyway, he uses for this cycle, which is amazing. It has how many discs? I know it's got like a whole pile of discs on it. 16 CDs, 20 hours of organ music. Oh, your friends will think you're ready to be committed. Absolutely. He uses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different organs, historical organs. They're just marvelous. There's a Schnitger organ in Hamburg, and a Rommel organ, and a Zilberman organ in Pfaffroda. I mean, when was the last time you were in Pfaffroda? to take a look at the Zilberman organ. Then there's Freiberg, of course, which is a famous one in the Petri Kirche. Let's see, there's another Schnitger, and there's a Thomas Abbey something, and oh my goodness, it's just amazing. And all of them have their own character. They've been selected, very carefully to suit, the nature of the music being performed. And Foccroulle is a fantastic organist. He really is. Just a sensational set. Richard Carr. Wonderful, wonderful independent label. So those are the 5. I'm sure every single one of you has another 5 great Bach organists. But these are all people who have done complete Bach organ music cycles. And that's what the list is limited to. I mean, if I just wanted to do single discs, I'd have that crazy Carl Richter DG stuff, and you could bring in E-Power Biggs and everybody else in the world. And, but you've got to have complete Bach organ music, people, in a box. That's the rule for this particular chat. Otherwise, you're just going to have a wanton list of every organist who's ever made a Bach recital, and what good does that do us, honestly? So let me have your selections. If you are an organ person or a Bachian, I'm sure that there will be several interesting ones that I've left out. I can think of at least half a dozen. So I'm looking forward to seeing them pop up on your lists. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.